On the call today, we will be making forward-looking statements, which involve risks and uncertainties. We refer you to the Form S-4 that was filed by Soaring Eagle with the Securities and Exchange Commission for further information regarding these risks and uncertainties. We will also be referring today to certain non-GAAP financial measures, including Foundry billable revenue, net present value, and adjusted EBITDA that we use in measuring our financial performance. A reconciliation of these non-GAAP measures to their nearest comparable GAAP measures where available can also be found in our Form S-4. Welcome to our first Investor Day. My name is Anna Marie Wagner, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Corporate Development at Ginkgo, and I lead our investor relations function. We're looking forward to being able to host you all in person soon, but in the meantime, we're happy to be able to meet you where you are. If you've been following Ginkgo over the past couple years, you've probably spent a lot of time listening to Jason and I talk about the company. And so today, we wanted to take a step back and introduce you to the broader team so you have the opportunity to hear directly from our technical and commercial leaders, as well as from our customers. If you're newer to the story, I'd also recommend you watch our investor presentation from May 11th. It's posted on our website, and it's a great primer to the platform and the business model. Today, we're going to dive a bit deeper, and I hope that by the end of this session, you'll really feel like you know who we are, and you have a better sense of what we really do here. We're going to start the day with a conversation with our founders. Somehow, after 20 years, they are all still friends and happily working together. And as I've gotten to know them, I've been really impressed by the totally unique and complementary superpowers that they've each developed. Then we're going to head inside and introduce you to the platform. Barry's going to take everyone through the Foundry and introduce you to some of our automation, software, and IT leaders who help make our scale possible. We'd love to show you the Foundry in person, though, so if you find yourself in Boston, definitely shoot us a note. Then to complete the review of the platform, you'll meet Patrick Boyle, our head of Codebase, who will help you understand what biological codebase actually is and how we leverage it to support our customers. You'll also meet Claire Laporte, our head of intellectual property, who helps not only protect our platform and the IP we've created, but also works to ensure our customers have strong IP so they can successfully commercialize their products. Once you've gotten an introduction to the platform, we'll introduce you to some of our customers across industries and from small startups to large corporations. You'll meet Jennifer Whip, our head of commercial for cell engineering, and Ina Kratzenberg, our chief business officer, who together help identify and structure new collaborations and ensure customer success. As part of this, we'll also highlight how we've enabled new companies to start on the platform, helping bring together the capital, strategic partnerships, and of course, access to our platform that accelerates innovation. You'll meet the leaders of Motif, Alonia, and the newest company building on our platform in the personal care space, who are building businesses in remarkably different end markets, but have leveraged Ginkgo's platform since day one. We hope that by now you're excited about the potential for biological innovation in the world. But alongside that potential is an imperative to treat biology with care. We'll feature two segments that help illustrate how we think about this imperative. First, we look at the need for a global biosecurity infrastructure and how Ginkgo thinks about the role of biosecurity in building our business. We'll also have a conversation about the role of ESG at Ginkgo and in investing more broadly. To wrap up our prepared remarks, I'm going to sit down with our CFO, Mark Dimitruk, to get a financial update and talk about some of the most common questions that I get from investors on our business model, our projections, and valuation. We'll end with a live Q&A where our team will be available to answer questions submitted on the Open Exchange streaming platform, as well as via Twitter at Ginkgo. With that, I'm so excited to be able to introduce you to my friends and colleagues here at Ginkgo. We'll get started with a conversation with our founders.
So I'm super excited about this part of Investor Day. One of the really kind of secret superpowers of Ginkgo is that we have a 5-person founding team that's been working together for 20 years and actually still likes each other. So I thought I would give you all a chance to meet the other founders here at Ginkgo, and we would just kind of do a little bit of a rap session, I guess. So maybe I'll kick it off. So Austin, Reshma, you joined Tom's lab. When was that?
I joined first in 2001.
Yeah, and I joined the year after in 2002.
So this is at MIT, 2001. How did it happen? What drew you to Tom in the first place? And had you done biology before you met Tom?
I did not, but like Tom's background also inspired me, right? Like he had built a biolab in the computer science building and had taught himself biology, and his vision of programming cells as kind of the next iteration from programming computers really inspired me to learn and get into biology.
Yeah, so Tom, how did that happen exactly? It's a bit of a strange leap, I would say. Yeah.
Well, so in around 1990 or so, I decided that the end of the interesting things happening in computer science was pretty much upon us. I was just kind of looking around, what's the next interesting thing to do? And
because computing was over in 1990.
Right,
to be clear.
Yeah, computers. Yeah. So I was looking around for the next thing to do, looking at what was going to be the next technology that was going to be important, and sort of looking at how we could make semiconductors and the next generation of electronics with the precision that would be required to work at that scale. And it looked to me like it was going to be chemistry, and more specifically, it looked like it was going to be biochemistry. So that was a major motivation.
As in biology was going to build the chips.
Yeah, that's right. So they funded.
Was it called synthetic biology at that point?
No, we called it cellular computing.
I see. Okay.
No.
When did it start getting called synthetic biology?
Probably 2003 or so, I'm guessing, somewhere.
Is that
around
right? So
there.
when was the SynBio work? When did you arrive on the scene?
I showed up at MIT in the fall of 2002, and I think you had just sort of figured out the name synthetic biology as an analogy to synthetic chemistry. Yes. So the idea is you use chemistry to synthesize things, we're going to use biology to make things, and so that's why.
The unique thing that came out of that MIT synthetic biology working group, arguably, was the idea of focusing on the underlying tools and technologies and trying to convert it into more like a mature engineering discipline, as Tom had seen, happen in computers.
Yeah, not just the tools, but also I think a very important aspect of it was the idea of standardization.
Yeah.
The idea that you could reuse components, that you could design them once and use them many times.
Yeah, what today we call our code base. Right. Yeah. And back then was this concept of, hey, we had standard parts in other engineering fields, from screw threads to computer functions. Why can't we have them in biology? And it was, well, Barry, you're our CTO. You head up our technology platform development today. If you look back, what do we have right? What do we have wrong? Right? Like, does it feel like a straight line from the MIT synthetic biology working group to Ginkgo
absolutely.
Today?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We nailed it all perfectly.
Oh, that's so laughable. Yeah.
Next question. That's really interesting to think about. I think some general themes have remained really true, and we have followed through on those. I'm thinking about approaching the technology from an engineering standpoint has been true. I think bringing to bear the learnings and technologies from other disciplines, whether it be computer science or operations research or whatever else, electrical engineering. I think we have done a good job of bringing all of those themes and concepts into the way that we do our work, leveraging robotics, leveraging software wherever possible. And you can't take a tour of the Ginkgo foundries without seeing all that.
It's a lot of robots, yeah.
There are a lot of robots. I think there are certainly things that where we haven't gotten as far as we would like, and nor has the field, arguably. I think it was a helpful way to think about it. I guess a more of a meta point there is that it's probably good for us to be careful about when we use analogies versus when we just are direct about the kind of the beauty and complexity of biology as its own thing, rather than trying to fit biology into prior engineering disciplines.
So speaking of sort of the beauty and wonder of biology, right? Like what got you into it? How did you start with it?
Well, biology itself, I fell in love with working in a lab at the University of Utah. So Toto Oliveira is a professor there, and he studies these venomous cone snails.
Venomous cone snails.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're
Beautiful.
they're amazing. So, okay, I'll nerd out for a second. So like these like little marine snails that like live in coral reefs like all around the world. And, you know, some of them basically spear fish. So they literally have a harpoon that they can spear fish with and like inject it with neurotoxins to paralyze it. Others like catch fish with nets.
The purpose of this meeting is to get the public excited about programming biology.
But while these neurotoxins have now been used as like as pain relief and other sort of therapeutic drugs and as amazing tools for neuroscience. But anyways, I just thought these snails were super cool, and that is how I fell in love with biology. And then when I met Tom, I realized that we could actually program biology and take the next step. And so that was my journey. Well, Tom, you should talk about iGEM because that was probably the other biggest community building exercise.
What does iGEM stand for?
The International Genetically Engineered Machine Competition. The teams compete to do something cool, you know, an experimental, system that they build over the summer and, demonstrate, come together in November typically or October, end of October, and, impress one another about
so
how
what was
wonderful.
the winning project from the first year?
I actually don't remember.
I do remember because I was in that competition.
Okay. Well, you see the competition. This competition idea really worked.
It was UT Austin, and they had like it was kind of cool. You put down about bacteria on a plate, they grew into like a lawn, and then you would shine light on it, and the ones where the light hit would change color. And so they made the first bacterial Polaroid, which was okay.
I was a judge at that competition. They deserved to win.
Yeah, they deserved it. But how many teams were in it last year?
Oh, I don't know, 350, something like that.
Yeah, from all
around the world.
Yeah, that's like thousands of students.
Huge participation from China and Europe.
Yeah, South America.
Maybe even South America.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I love about it is you go and you like tour around and it's like, everybody's so fired up about what they can do at biology. And the beauty of the iGEM teams to me is they have no idea what will or won't work. And so they try all this stuff and surprise, like some of these things that everybody else would have told them won't work actually do work.
Yeah,
right?
I think one of the things is, they're early enough in their education that they don't realize how hard some of these problems really are. And so they're willing to try things that, you and I wouldn't.
This feels like us in 2000. All right, that's what I would say, right? Like, it's like you just don't know any better.
That's right.
And then you're like, well, at least like, if I go off on this journey with people I enjoy being with, it's not going to be a miserable life, so let's give it a frickin' swing. And like, I don't know there's much more to it than that, right? Like,
I think that's right.
Naivete is your friend, I think.
It's your friend, big time. I couldn't agree more.
And lo, Ginkgo was born.
Yeah, well, I feel like, like that's the reality. I guess, what do you think when we came in your office, Tom, to tell you about Ginkgo? Do you remember that? Ginkgo.
Well,
unnamed company.
We didn't have a name yet. Right? It's called Ginkgo. Well,
I think we came into your office and said, we're thinking about starting a company.
I think my first reaction was, can I join you?
I think an important part of the logic was that academia is great for doing, hopefully blue sky, like high risk research. And what we believed at the time was that what synthetic biology needed was engineering, industrialization, and things that could better be done arguably in a commercial context than an academic context where it's about, publishing papers. And so I think at least for me, looking back, I think that was an important part of the logic about why taking what was essentially the same mission and moving it from an academic context into a commercial context would allow us to do something cool, right?
I feel like that's always been true about Ginkgo. It's been sort of a mission. There was a larger mission and goal for it. It wasn't like, I just want to build a company and flip it, or anything like that. Like very clearly from day one, that wasn't the case with us. And I think the team that's joined around us as a result reflects that. Right? Like you're buying into Ginkgo, you're basically buying into now 500 zealots that want to make biology easier to engineer and are going to keep pushing that for the long run. And I think it starts all the way back at that point in time.
I think we've always had sort of a long-term point of view. I think quite a bit longer than a typical company in the space.
I think by being a mission-driven company, like we were optimizing on our mission above anything else, right? And I think that's what let you tolerate a lot of pain in the early years, right?
Yeah.
So we would do all sorts of crazy things, apply for every grant under the sun just to try to keep things afloat before we sort of really saw traction. And yeah, I think we signed our first few commercial contracts in like 2014, and that's sort of what led us to then have the confidence to join YC and take off from there.
I think it helped to set the bit of what it means to be a fast-growing tech company. You know, I think we had like the solid mission fit. I think we had Tom's long-term vision that said, look, if we build into this and follow these technology paths, like there's a big thing waiting for you. And so then if that's true, you should just grow like a tech company, right? And that's what we learned at YC, right? It was like, if you lean into it and you bet on scale and you have a business that benefits from scale, it'll pay off. So just keep betting.
Yeah, it's interesting because I can't remember when that sort of economy of scale and build scale idea kind of really took hold. Would you date it back to 2014 to YC?
Yeah, because I kind of think that's like when we started seeing the well, I don't know what year it was, probably like 2 years later that Tom picked up on the fact that the output of the facility had been tripling the last couple of years and our costs had been halving, and we started to say like, oh, like we should own that metric and actually meet it internally, like that was all around that same time.
So it was around 2017, definitely not earlier than that, because we had about 3 years of that sort of Knight's Law progress under our belts, and it started around like kind of 2015.
One of the things that, that I think, was different about the company also was the idea that, we should be building a computer platform for the, technology really from day one.
Yeah, there was this realization somewhere along the line that what we needed to do for people was like the whole project. Like we're going to program a cell for you like we program a computer, and what you're going to get at the end of the day is like the finished cell. And that suddenly meant we had to do like all these things. Like once we landed on that business model as being the right business model, the amount of technology and infrastructure that had to be under one roof was like daunting. But it was the right, I think our first principles view was, this is the right product to put out the door if you want to meet the mission of making it easier to engineer biology. Well, sell people a program cell, right? And so that felt great.
Yeah.
And it just meant we had to build technology for 10 years, right?
And the other thing that it kind of mandated was that we would have to work on a lot of those projects at the same time.
Yeah.
If that was going to be our product, well, we would need to have like a bunch of them. And I think therein lies the core of the like horizontal platform idea.
Yeah.
And then what that pushes you to do is to ask, okay, how can I work on like diverse projects at the same time? And like, what does the platform have to look like to do that?
This is the game we're playing, right? Like this is how I see it. And I just think it's new to biotech, right? I think one of the things about Ginkgo is we're a little bit outside the mold of biotech. We've taken a lot of lessons from, Tom and semis. We've taken lessons from, business models and app store economics and things like that. And, we'll see.
Well, I think amongst the founding team, and the way I describe it to people is like on paper, the four of us, not Tom, but the rest of us sort of look identical. I feel like you could literally swap out our resumes for each other and you wouldn't know the difference.
That's accurate, yeah.
And so I think what's happened with the founding team is that we've essentially speciated over the years, right? Like we all started as the same common ancestor, and then it speciated to into our own niches in the company. And I think that was pretty key to us sticking together for almost 20 years now.
I feel like we benefit also because the vision is very tight. In other words, like it's a lot easier for us to kind of push in our directions without getting off the rails, in part because, all the way back to Tom, it's been a tight mission for so long. And then having folks then who have that history, going back to the foundation of the field, then, managing the company, like that is such an unfair advantage.
But I also think that the trust that we've built up over time and that speciation into special rules now, or into specialized roles, has also extended to the entire leadership team of Ginkgo, right? We operate in a way where we are very comfortable sort of trusting each other, pushing power and responsibility down in the organization. Yep. And I feel like we've sort of tried to bake that into the culture. And so in the leadership team, it was very natural to bring in other folks and trust them with large amounts of responsibility to make decisions for Ginkgo, because that's how we operate with each other. And so it's sort of just a natural extension of that.
Yeah, as the platform scales up, I think it's just more and more true, right? That's one of the things I'm excited about, as we're taking the company public and the company's getting bigger, is just more folks invested in the success of the organization across the whole team. I think we're laying the groundwork for that culturally. I'm really excited about it. Mm-hmm. So Austin, you spent a lot of time engaging with other startups in the ecosystem around Ginkgo. How do you think about it? How do you think about what's sort of coming behind us, and how do we engage with them in a healthy way?
And some of this, I think, comes down back to kind of our, painful start, right? Many years of scrounging for resources and trying to get started. And I think our vision of making biology easier to engineer is like, how do we not have other startups go through the same pain? And so having gone through that ourselves, we understand sort of what those companies need and how we could provide those services to those companies. And I think it'd be extremely rewarding if we can get to the point where companies are being created because Ginkgo exists. Like if we are enabling new companies, I think that would be a dream for me. Yeah.
So it's been kind of like a weird year for biology, a weird year and a half with COVID. And I think there's like suddenly this like awareness that biology is powerful stuff, which has maybe been like obvious to us, but I think again, people take biology for granted. They haven't noticed it as much. And so, here we're opening it up. We're making biology as easy to program as it is to program computers. And we're going to open that platform up so that, kids can do it, use it someday. Like, how do we do it? Right? Like how do you do it safely and responsibly?
Well, I think this is actually a topic that we've thought about even since the very beginning. I mean, if you think back to our days at MIT, we had a lot of conversations about biosecurity, biosafety. How do we create a community around this technology that ensures that it uses the technology overwhelmingly for constructive purposes? I actually credit Drew a lot for, seeding a lot of these conversations, both with us and with the community at large, right?
Bringing in a lot of non-engineers, non-scientists.
Yeah, we engaged with, we had anthropologists, artists, designers, social scientists, policy folks. And so I think that's always been baked into even the origins of the field. And I give Drew a lot of credit for that. But I think now at Ginkgo, as we're faced with like, hey, we have this incredibly powerful platform, we're potentially going to open it up to startups, to a broader set of folks, maybe ultimately to kids, then how do we continue to, ensure that it's used for good, right? And so I think baking in a cultural value, both inside the company and without, around caring how our platform is used is super important, because these are not easy questions, right? Part of the reason why I think that's how we frame it, right? We care how our platform is used is we're not actually saying we have all the answers. We just care what the answers are.
Yeah, what I'm excited about it at Ginkgo is a culture of establishing that across the whole team, right? Because then you end up with ultimately thousands of people caring how the platform is used. That's their diverse backgrounds, their ability to sort of help us see that what's coming.
It needs to be a diverse community, right? I think we've learned from every other technology that if you have just a narrow slice of society who's developing and using the technology, then that bias is it to only benefit that narrow slice, right? You need a diverse team of people who are building and using the technology if you actually want to see around all the possible corners and all the way things can go wrong.
And who feel like they own the place so that they make, wise choices about what to do with it at the balance, of growth and impact. Yeah, 100%. Well, I'll ask our I'd say the number one question I get from investors, which is whether in our lifetimes we will see dinosaurs back. So I'm going to ask for just a thumbs up or thumbs down from each of you on this question right now at the same time.
Wait. Are we giving thumbs up that it's going to happen, or that it's a good idea?
Thumbs up is that we will see them in our lifetime. Is
something that looks like a dinosaur, or literally.
It can look like it, Tom. Doesn't need. Yeah, we're not trying to get too technical here. We're not trying to get back to.
What about birds? Where are we on birds?
Birds. I understand birds are dinosaurs, but everyone knows what they mean when I say when we say dinosaur. It means something to you.
It breathes fire. Is that the?
No, that's dragons. Also want that. That would be a second one separate. Those haven't existed.
So you want like a green, scaly-looking thing that didn't actually exist?
I mean, it can have stupid feathers, but it needs to be big, and it needs to be, people need to...
Like a brontosaurus. You want a brontosaurus.
Do we have to be scared of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Big enough that you're scared. Yeah, you wouldn't want to be like in a room with it alone. Okay. All right. You're at it.
So what is the thumbs up
Thumbs
again?
up means that we're going to have them. Yes, they'll happen.
In how long?
In our lifetimes.
Oh, I don't know.
Austin's lifetime. All right, here we go.
There should be a question of if we're going to extend our life.
Yeah. Okay, don't go down that. This is not Silicon Valley. All right, we're in Boston. All right, 1, 2, 3. Yes! All right, well, The last 20 years have been an absolute pleasure to build this with you. Excited for the next 20 or infinity with Austin. Really, thanks for the time, guys.
Thank you.
I'm super excited for our first Investor Day here at Ginkgo. I'm going to have a little bit of time with you up here at front before we dive into a whole bunch of different elements of the company. And I thought I'd use just a moment to give you a little bit of the architecture of Ginkgo and highlight some of the key questions that I frequently get from investors that I think are worth highlighting up front. The core idea behind Ginkgo is that you can program a cell like you program a computer because it runs on digital code in the form of DNA. Right? So it's ATCs and Gs, not zeros and ones, but you can read that code with DNA sequencing and write it with DNA synthesis. And if you can read and write code and you have a machine that'll run it, you can program it. And so, we've known that, you got to hear just a fun conversation with me and my co-founders. This is an idea that goes back, 20 years ago to when we met at MIT. And what we've had to figure out in the intervening years are both how to build the technology to do that in a way that drive scale and value into the business, and then what's the right business model? How do you commercialize this idea of compiling and debugging genetic code? All right, so let me drill in a little bit. So on the technology side, the number one thing to understand that's different between computer programming and cell programming is that cell programming is a physical process. In other words, when I compile DNA code, I literally have to build a molecule, like ATC, those are chemicals. I do polymer synthesis to build that piece of DNA and install it physically into a cell. Well, as a result, we need physical facilities to compile code. It's not just virtual like on a computer. And so you'll get a tour, of our foundry from our platform leads, and you'll see, 200,000 square feet of physical infrastructure, robotics and automation. And the key business implication of that infrastructure is it improves with scale. Just like Ford or Intel. The more of it you do, the cheaper it gets. And so that's one of the key competitive moats around the business is as our platform gets bigger, we can offer something more valuable to our customers. And then you'll also hear about it on the data side. As we do more cell engineering, we learn more. So you'll hear from our head of code base about that, how we build up that data asset that also makes us offer a better product year over year to customers. So that is the source of value at Ginkgo. Simple as that. Compounding technical scale. How do you harvest that value? So we actually spent a lot of time thinking about what is the right business model for this. And one of the obvious ones would be, well, hey, use that platform, go make your own products, right? You have this great platform, why don't you go become a therapeutics company or something like that? There's a lot of money in the therapeutics industry. And one of the things we realized was that would be a mistake because once you pick a narrow window of products, you end up building a smaller, less general platform. And so it's not as good as if you serve everybody and work on everybody's products. And then importantly, we decided our customers are a lot better at launching products in these markets than we would ever be. So just in the last 3 or 4 months, we've done announced deals with Biogen, one of the largest therapeutic biotech companies, with Corteva, one of the largest ag biotech companies, and with one of the largest flavor and fragrance companies in the world. In addition to new deals with startups in the cosmetics industry and other new small companies pioneering applications for cell programming. We will never be as good at launching a therapeutic as Biogen or an ag product as Corteva or we have our long historical relationship with Bayer. They are the product developers. And what Ginkgo does is we basically provide a common horizontal platform to program cells and take that work off their plate. So they don't have to have their own scientists doing it by hand at the lab bench. Instead, our robotics and automation, our data assets are available to them. Okay, so that sounds good. Good value to the customer, improves with scale. How do you make money? The key big value capture for Ginkgo is in taking a piece of the value of those products. So think like, app store ecosystem, right? The big mobile phone companies spend a lot of investment making great ecosystem for you to be able to launch an app and make a whole bunch of money as a product developer in their app ecosystem, and they take a piece of that pie. Exactly the same business model we have here. We're going to take a piece either through a royalty on the sale of that drug or that fragrance, or in lieu of a royalty, if you're a smaller company, we could take equity in the company. And that value, that is the long-term value of Ginkgo. One of the key questions we get is, how do you think about, we're valued at $15 billion. How do you think about justifying the valuation of the company? How is it ultimately going to be worth many, many more multiples on that value in the future? And the answer is, the market for cell programs is going to dwarf the market for computer programs. These are the physical goods. Food, right? Building materials, medicines, all of the physical things in our lives ultimately are biotech products, and they just don't know it yet. And so getting a small piece of that pie will ultimately really drive the overwhelming majority of the value here at Ginkgo. We do get paid also. We have foundry revenues. People pay us as we do the work for them. But ultimately, the long-term value is actually in that sort of app value capture, long-term value share. And that's a key thing for investors in the company that to really understand. And that's the kind of investors we're looking for, are people that understand that long-term opportunity for Ginkgo in that area. And then finally, I'll mention, we've been doing more and more work in the area of biosecurity. This is something that's actually really important to me as our platform gets better, and we make it as easy to program cells as it is to program computers. Doing that safely and responsibly requires biosecurity. Just like we need cybersecurity for computers, you're going to need biosecurity for cell programming. And what's fortunate for Ginkgo is it's actually turning into quite a nice business that's growing quickly. And so you'll hear from that team as well today. So really excited to welcome you here to the Investor Day and enjoy the show.